Welcome to JustWannaQuilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. I'm Elizabeth Townsend-Guard, your host. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School. I also hold 2 fellowships right now, one at the Business School and one at the Newcomb Institute at Tulane, and I just want to quilt. So today we talk with William Hardy of Carhartt. This is a company that makes uniforms and is called into action to make masks. They've been around for 131 years. They've been through World War I, World War II, and now COVID-19. We have Haley Barnett with us, my law student, who is working on the COVID-19 project, and so she joins us as well.
Yeah, so my name is William Hardy. I go by William, and I'm calling from Irvine, Kentucky. It's when you come into our town, there's a sign that says where the bluegrass kisses the mountains. So I'm about 45 minutes east of Lexington. So right off I-75. Kentucky's a long state, east to west. So I'm kind of in east central Kentucky.
And how far are you from Paducah? The quilters know Paducah because they have a big...
Absolutely. I know Paducah as well. I used to live close to Paducah. So we have many associates in about 2 counties over. So I'm about 5 hours from Paducah. I'm not at one end of the state to the other, but I'm pretty close.
Got it. And then the other question we always ask is, do you have a memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
Absolutely. I have a grandmother, and I can still see the patterns and the quilts that she had that my brother and I have now, and I can still see the reds and the greens and the yellows and the blue vividly in my mind. And that same grandmother that I'm speaking to, who did quilting, she also worked for Carhartt as well. It's a legacy in our family.
Oh, very cool. Well, Haley is a law student, and she's joining us as well. So tell us a little bit about what's happening. So we are, we don't usually date our podcast, but because of sort of what they are, right now it's April 17th. We're about 5 or 6 weeks into COVID-19 really hitting the United States. And tell us a little bit about your company and what's happening and sort of your journey over the last few weeks.
Yeah, so Carhartt, for those that may not know, Carhartt, we're 131 years old. We were founded in 1889. We are still privately held by the Carhartt family. So our founder, Hamilton Carhartt's great-grandson, Mark Valade, is our CEO. His mother is still alive. She is Gretchen Carhartt Valade, and she's our chairperson emeritus of the board. And Mark has 3 of his children, who actually all 3 work for us, and they're the 5th generation of Carhartt. So it's fantastic. We've been around a long time, and simply what we do is we make what we think is the world's greatest workwear, and we serve and protect hardworking people is what we try to do. So this is not unusual for us. We've done it in World War I, World War II.
That was what I was going to ask, is sort of, have you done this, has this situation happened before where you suddenly are making things you didn't expect to be making?
Absolutely. So in World War II, you think about the story as just making things for when the war was going on, and that was absolutely true. But there's a couple of twists to those stories. So in World War I, we made the trousers for our soldiers who were fighting. And then in World War II, we made a couple of different items. We made the jungle suits for the Marines fighting in the Pacific theater. And in the European theater, we actually made the twill coveralls for those who drove the tanks in the personnel carriers. They wore the twill coveralls. But the thing I will tell you is during World War II, the really fascinating part of the story is we recognized there was a real need for continuing to make workwear for the folks here in the United States. So think about one very famous one, Rosie the Riveter. Think about her. So we were making coveralls and those things for all the folks who were here stateside that were playing such an important, vital role. So yes, we were making for the troops, but at the same time, we were making for those on the front lines at home, if you will. So
very cool. Now, have you all, I imagine you have an archive of sort of having that long a history in your history. So tell us a little bit about how do you, like, And then we'll get into the story. So do you have like stuff from all these different periods, or sort of how do you keep track of your history of a company that's 131 years old?
Great question. And in recent years, we actually have a department, an archive department, and we have an archivist who came from Ford Motor and works for us now. He has a couple on his team, and they have done a fantastic job, Dr. Gard, of going through and cataloging everything, putting it in obviously a safe area. You know, the right, you got to have like I don't want to call it a museum, but you've got to have a lab, if you will, to have all of those things. Yeah. And when they do demonstrations and review history, they've got white gloves on. It's amazing, to touch those things. But there's so many things that we learn through, and the advertising is probably, I mean, I'm a product person. I make product, but I love to see all of the older ads that we have for whatever was going on at the time in that era of life. But that is so neat. And Hamilton Carhartt was such a visionary, and I want to call him in the correct sense. He was a marketing genius, and he did so many things. We started out servicing the railroad business. That's how we designed and built the overall that we're famous for. And for farmers and railroaders, it was so important that he outfitted them. He passed out railroad time books that said Carhartt on the outside, where they could keep all their notes. Passed them out to farmers where they could keep track of when they planted their crops, when the first frost.
That's so clever.
And there's so many amazing things just like that. So many booklets and pieces of material that I find just to be awesome, in addition to all the cool products.
Well, it's so cool to have a company your age. When I have a PhD in cultural history, and I focused on the culture of war, so World War I and World War II. And so part of my work I did was I was in the archives at Harrods for a little bit of time, and I looked at all their advertising and all of that. So it makes me want to come play at your place, because I just think, wow, like those are such an important historical record that and companies come and go, so we often lose that. But to have a company that not only is as old as yours, but recognizes the importance of the historical record is really, really, really cool.
Absolutely. And there's so many things that Dr. Gard, people bring to us in our communities that says, I found this in my grandmother's house when she passed away. I found this time card. I mean, literally, we have time cards. Cool. I found her 25-year pen that she got, and they loan them to us that we put on in our facilities. We have a display that we put those things behind lock and key on to show people, and it's it's just amazing. We love it when people bring in, because we get living history, and we get stories that we use to piece together.
Now, I have one more question, and then we'll go on. And I'm sure Haley has a ton of questions for you about the mask stuff, so we'll turn it over to her to ask you that part. How much has the mode of production changed over time? I imagine that the machinery, like we think about the sewing machine, which is like an important part of like making clothing, as pretty like it changes and it doesn't change. So I'm curious how much things have changed in your factories over time, or how you make clothing over time.
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. It's a great time in which you asked that question. So one of the things with the apparel and textile industry, if you think about it, it went on some many rough times in the 90s, and there was a lot of offshoring that occurred, and that offshoring actually from an equipment and a technology standpoint really hurt, because what people did was use labor throughout the world to achieve those efficiencies, if you will. When that happened, let me tell you a couple things that happened. So, Carhartt's been one. We've always had a domestic presence. We still have 5 facilities today in the USA. Of course, we have our owned and operated manufacturing in Mexico and throughout the world, but we've maintained a presence in the U.S., and we always have for over 131 years. What happened, though, was that textile raw materials left. It became harder to source those, and you had to go into the country and regions and where they were available. But the other thing that left was around, think about technology and machinery. So there was no longer kind of that need, and I'll call it this hemisphere, especially North America, to design that automation and technology. So you think about robots, think about all those things in other industries. They were not happening in our industries. The raw materials left. A lot of the labor left, and other industries, I should say, were automating, and we weren't. So we kept up by keeping the best quality standards, working with some great machinery companies who helped us from a automation standpoint. In recent years, we've actually in the last year and a half kicked off a project that we call craft. And think about it, craft, like if you were a craft collector, think about craft. We call it continuous improvement, respecting associates, and forward-thinking transformation. And with that project, we're looking at all types of automation and all types of the change in the way in which we manufacture. We want to be the absolute best place to work.
That's really
in our facilities, in our production facilities. So we're working with companies on automation and things that we haven't done in many years, that because, number one, it wasn't available, but now we're re-engaging in the conversation to say, hey, we can do some of these things together. And we have some of our sewing machine companies who had went overseas and who are coming back to help because they love the idea of reshoring.
So, and I think this virus has made us much more interested in staying local and staying national because Absolutely. We recognize so I'm going to turn it over to Haley. Haley, do you want to ask some questions? So I'll kind of transition to what's happening now.
Yeah, sure. So William, I prefer to call people, Mr. Hardy, but you said to call you William. So
let's go, William. Let's go,
okay.
William. Yeah.
No, you've been wonderful to talk to, and I'm just interested in knowing more about your role as the Senior Vice President of Supply Chain and kind of how you've pivoted from your Carhartt's normal day-to-day operations to the COVID-19 response. What has kind of your role been as far as this shift? I saw that y'all are committed to making 50,000 surgical gowns and 2.5 million masks. So just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So first of all, you think about supply chain, and we have the greatest craftspeople in the world at Carhartt. I want to point that out. Our craftspeople are great, and I think what we're going to get into shows that we can make anything. And that's to me that's what inspires me. It really does as I go through the story. But when you think about supply chain, a lot of people, that's a newer word. I've been at Carhartt 28 years, and supply chain just kind of came out of somewhere a few years ago. Now they have college degrees in supply chain.
Oh yeah, supply chain management. I have a humanities background. I was a communication major with an English and history double minor. And I just learned about the supply chain as a concept last week. And
right. It's you hear it now. You hear it now used, in the presidential briefings, the governor's briefings. You hear that word all the time. But think about the way I like to describe it quickly in just a few words is that supply chain is I'm responsible for making it, storing it, moving it, and shipping it. So make, move, store, and ship to our customers. So that's the way we look at our supply chain. But I guess so. Our story was really around that middle of March, around March 16th or 17th, really when we saw this crisis.
Right. So I'm curious. I'm just going to ask you. My moment of so the university shut down on not shut down. We went online on the 11th, and the kids had to be, and that was a Wednesday or Thursday, Wednesday, and the kids had to be out of the dorms by Saturday, which I thought was that was the first tremor. It was like an earthquake, right? And then the NBA shutting down that same night as we were coming home from the grocery store. That was freaky. So what was that moment for you when you all were like, oh no, right? Like things tell me a little bit about so you're in the middle of March, but I'm really curious, sort of that personal, how did that happen? Yeah.
So really for me, so great question. Really for me, it was on that Thursday night, here in Kentucky, our governor said at that point about closing school. So earlier in the day, I guess there was two moments. I have a daughter that's at the University of Kentucky. She got kind of the same email that says for a couple of weeks, we're going to have online learning, and then spring break is in there. So there were 3 weeks kind of we started. And I was like, okay, it's getting serious. By Thursday night, my wife is actually the chairperson of our local school board here. And she was on calls, getting calls. that said, the governor is saying we're going to close schools in Kentucky, kind of the same deal around, most people had a spring break and then was going to close down for a couple more weeks. And that was Thursday night. So we get to work on Friday morning and we're like, now we've really got a situation. We always put our associates first. That's ingrained in us as a family company. And so we're like, what are we going to do? We really need to help our associates.
Right.
But our problem was, we had a facility that morning that had the road flooded on the way to the facility due to a raining. So they were not here. So we learned so much. The story is a story of learning. They were not there. And then all of our other facilities in the States, except our distribution center, they work a modified schedule where they work 6 to 10 a.m. on Fridays and then they go home. And we were like, how can we pull this all together where we can communicate?
Right.
And we've got a plant that's not there. And then in our Mexico facilities, that weekend was a holiday. So they were off on Friday and Monday. And we were like, okay. So that started meetings. We finally said that Friday morning, let's calm down. We know we can't get to everyone today. So let's figure out how to communicate.
Right.
And figure out the right plan. So what we did was we met all weekend. I can remember it well. I paced the house and my family was looking at me. Little did I know very soon I was going to be working from home right after that. But we put together a plan where we said, okay, the word social distancing was new.
Right.
And we said, let's take all of our facilities, including our corporate office, our supply chain operations center, where my office is, all of our manufacturing and distribution centers in Kentucky and Tennessee and Mexico, worldwide, basically, and go down to 50%. And we'll go in, have a meeting on Monday morning, communicate to everyone. The world's changing.
You were doing that so that you could keep doing production, but people would be further apart. Was that the idea? Is social distancing within the manufacturing setting?
Yeah, and what we did, and the way we did that was we were going to spread out all the machines, all the desks, and we were going to try to let people kind of self-govern through it to say, hey, those that can work at home, go ahead. But we know you can't in the manufacturing distribution environment, so we're going to figure out a way to do that so we can spread people out, and we're going to come up with a rotating schedule. So we said, whoever goes home, we're going to pay. So that was the first thing we did, was take that worry away. And we said, we are paying everyone, whether you can work or not, but we're going to go kind of on a ever other, what do we call it? When I was in college, the Flip Friday schedule. We're going to go the every other week. We're going to have a group that works. And so that was Monday. Well, Dr. Gard, as the day went on and we got into Tuesday, we all looked at one another and we said, well, at 50%, that might still be 100 people in a facility or 400 in a facility, even though it's, huge facility.
You still got a problem.
We've got a problem. So by Wednesday morning, we had pivoted and sent everyone home in our facilities with pay all around on all of our internal facilities that we own. And that was so encouraging to our associates to know, hey, through April 12th, we're paying you. And you need to take care of your...
I saw that on your press release. It was like, really seriously, these are hard times. And I think I've been trying to explain this to some people who don't really understand that it's like, it's your heart, it's your company, it's the loyalty of your your family. And, that's what you're supposed to, if you can do it, that's what you're supposed to be doing. It's such a great model that you guys were willing to do that with your employees. So then what happened? So now no one's working. Like, you have orders to fill, I would imagine, and like other things. So what's that? I mean, that's craziness. Like, so what happened next?
Yeah. So kind of as we back up, simultaneous to coordinating this, where we were going to send everyone home, kind of back to Haley's challenge there about how did this come about? Well, on Monday, that was the 16th or something. I got a call from a peer, our chief financial officer, called me and said, "Hey, a friend of hers at a textile company that makes gowns, protective gowns, and they also make bed sheetings and whatever for the hotel industry." Okay, that business has like stopped,
right.
The hotel business, but they're hearing they need to get all the gowns they can. And could we help them? They thought of us because they know we have facilities in the States and in
Right.
Kentucky and Tennessee. Could we help them? And so we said, why, sure. So this was Monday. And I talked with their head of supply chain. I said, I really need a sample. We're used to making overalls, jackets, big, heavy sweatshirts and jeans, and you're going to send me a gown. I really need to look at it. So they sent a gown and what we call a tech pack that shows all the specifications and those type of things. Before I received that package, by Tuesday, I received calls from the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce on behalf of the governors. They had the governor's office on the line on the other phone. I received calls from the Kentucky Department of Emergency Management. Our 1-800 customer service line was receiving calls from states all over, Missouri, Washington.
Craziness.
All of our friends are reaching out to us, family members, saying, we need masks and gowns.
That's
and we need help.
craziness. The idea that this crisis, because we saw it on our side very early, that because we don't really want to be making masks. We'll talk more about the homemade mask thing in a minute, but how fast people recognized the crisis was happening is what's so remarkable to me. That it wasn't like 3 weeks in. It was like the schools are shutting down and now we don't have enough equipment. What was your take on that? Were you surprised as well that you were getting these calls, or sort of what was your thoughts about like what was happening to you?
There was a complete sense of duty for us to do it, and a concern for our fellow man, because we all have families and friends, and somehow there's all a connection, all a story that we have. And I think we were learning so much at the same time, Dr. Gard. That's kind of what went through my mind, is every hour that passed, or every time we watch TV or wherever we get our source of news, it was like, oh my gosh, this is serious. And look at the folks who are covered up in PPE, and how PPE is no longer becoming washable, but in a lot of ways disposable. Yeah. And I'm like, there's no way anybody could prepare. Now, I know from supply chain experience with a lot of those materials to make those masks and gowns, they're not in this hemisphere. They're not readily available. There's not a lot of people left in the U.S. who can sew at scale like we can. And it became just immediate, our sense of duty. There was no meeting. Should we do this? Should we not? On Monday night, when I got the call from the textile company about helping make 50,000 gowns, I called the president of our company, who's my boss, and we were like, we got to do it. Let's see if we can do it. And then like each call that came in, I was like, okay, now it's mask.
Right.
Now it's mask. And I can remember the talk at first. You remember the N95, the molded type mask? I was I know that takes machinery, technology that we don't have. And so there was a moment like, okay, let's understand mask. And it wasn't just a few minutes till the Kentucky Department of Emergency Management, they actually, when in a crisis in Kentucky, because they helped out actually with Katrina, the Department of Forestry Management, they run logistics when there are emergencies across the country. So they actually coordinated with me and brought samples. I met them in the parking lot of a shopping mall. They gave me samples of a gown and like four masks that I still have. And we went to work immediately, and within 24 to 48 hours, we had a sample made of these particular masks that were ones that we could make.
Interesting. Haley, I'm going to ask a follow-up question if you're cool with that, and then I'll turn it back to you. I know what people are going to be asking. What mask style did you use? What fabric were you using? Like, and again, we'll talk more about the homemade masks, but we've been at a loss. I mean, we've all been trying to figure it out. So I'm curious what you all decided to do and what the process was, and the fabric, and we care, and we're curious what you did.
So problem number one, and it always is, whether it's a jacket or an overall or sweatshirt, is always the raw materials.
Right.
That when it comes down to our business, that's always when we're out of something or can't get back in business on something, it's 9 times out of 10 it's raw materials. So when we looked at the mask itself, we went into our sample room and our R&D center and said, okay, let's find something that we can sew to see if we can come up with the design,
right.
if you will. And we're like, and what machinery it might require. And that took no time. We were like, okay, we can sew this, we can do this. The machines that we have, it takes like 2 or 3 machines. We have all type. That's not a problem. We have people who we sent. I want to call out our associates, because we sent out a one call, if you will, and said, who would like to come and volunteer to make these, and we will pay you a premium to do this. And some have said, hey, sign me up. We had more than enough volunteers to do that. And we said, we're going to limit it, 15, 20 people in each building, but who can do it? So we had volunteers. So we had volunteers, we had machines, and we didn't have raw materials. So that was a huge, huge challenge for us. So here's the greatest thing. And I've said this in other interviews, the collaboration internally in our company was like I've never seen it before, but externally, it was equally impressive. We might call the people who we get our famous brown duck from, or our fleece from our sweatshirts, and they would say, I don't know. We don't have that, but let me give you this number. I know this guy that has this one durable water repellent fabric that, Hanes just came out today, and they said they're using. I know where you can get some. And do you know there's an automated machine that makes the disposable pleated mask? And we were like, well, no. And it was our sewing machine company that our main one that we do business with. They hooked us up with 3 automatic machines. One is shipping tomorrow. It's coincidental that we're talking about it, from Asia, that's coming to us, that makes 93 disposable masks a minute.
Wow.
But it takes 3 different fabrics and the elastic earpieces to feed in it. So our biggest problem right out of the gate was raw materials, but the collaboration to keep helping us, call this person, call that next person, was unbelievable. And everyone we wanted to talk, that we talked to, that couldn't even sell the stuff to us, was telling us who to buy it from. And to me, that was like this patriotic kind of duty and a call to action that I've never seen us have before.
Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it? It's just been amazing. All right, Haley, do you have another question?
Yeah. So I, to bounce off of Dr. Townsend Guard's question, as far as the materials and the disposable versus the reusable. So in the quilting community, what we've seen is there was a lot of confusion at first about like which type of mask to use, which type of material. And I think that wasn't even the quilting community's fault. There was so much about like, should everyday Americans be wearing masks and what kind? I think that the CDC guidelines that came out on April 3rd were really helpful, but there still is a lot of information. And that's kind of what I've been researching, is what is the best filter type, if you should put one in the mask. Should people be using vacuum bags? What kind of fabric is the best for people? Do you use ties or do you use elastics? So that's kind of.
So what did you all decide? Yeah. So what did you tell us what you all did, and what did you learn? I imagine you had to get up to speed pretty quickly too.
Yeah, we did. So one of the things that we had to do was learn about what brings comfort to the face. Now that may sound odd, but we had to say it has to be comfortable for the wearer, obviously, and then what is the most important thing? It has to work. And so we said, let's see if we can do both at the same time. And certainly everyone deserves so much credit for you want to cover, but we wanted something that was comfortable, that fit, that we could affect more people by making a single mask or two. Yeah. And so we settled basically on 2 different ones. Now, what we call the pleated health mask is kind of like the
surgical,
feels paperish type, that's going to run through the automatic machine. Now, this is disposable. It's the current layer on it, the outer layer, I should say, is a liquid repellent that obviously deflects moisture. The inner layer moves moisture away from the wearer, and then the inner layer is specifically designed against the face that really, they say it approximately 90 to 95% of the particulates are moved away from the body, but it's also comfortable against the face. So it's kind of unique in that works as a shield to deflect, but then when it does get wet, it moves moisture away. These, and just to tell you our thinking about these again, the machine will make 93 of these a minute. If you can imagine, we've got a couple of the machines coming, so we'll easily be able to make 75 to 85,000 per day. We see the need for these around, and actually we're going to use them in our facility. Is that so health is number one to our associates that are coming in the building. So we're doing health checks, temperature screenings, all those things each day. But what we're thinking is we will hand one of these out each day to our employees, and a lot of people, we feel like we'll do the same. We've got millions of requests for these. And just to give you an example, like a bank. Banks are closed, but someone needs to come in and close on a mortgage or something that the bank would have on hand that they would give to this person that's coming in. And so we think there's a real need for the
community-wide, right? This is the everyday. And do you think those will get distributed? Like, that's the other question. I mean, we have we have more questions, but okay. So do you think those will be distributed? Like, will we be able to get those just, like, will they be sold or available to places? Like, when will, like, how far, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like there's that's another question that people worry about. And then I also want to know the second style masks that you did. So you can answer whichever question you want.
Yeah, so the first one about the availability. So we've been meeting on this nonstop because we want to do a couple things. We want to help our associates for sure, and our associates come into the building and our associates' family. So we want to make available to them some of our first ones off the line, and then we have a obligation to help those local health care agencies and fire departments and first responders there. So we have, and then we will obviously make them available, through our online opportunity that way. So yes, we're working through that because we want to. It's kind of an untraditional method to get things to people because, we take orders and have FIFO and those type of things, on orders. Now we want to help as many people as we can as soon as we can. If that makes sense. So that's why we're trying to do it correctly. 500 masks might not do a whole lot for, New York City. I'm sure they would accept them, but 500 masks in a small town, Shreveport, Louisiana, would be wonderful.
Usually, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so tell us about the second one.
So this is one for people that would wear in crowds, and so it's a cover mask. We call it a fabric health mask, and it also it can be washed and dried multiple times. This is one that maybe if you're running out to the grocery store or this is what we would anticipate people wear. It's outside layer is also a water repellent finish that external moisture will stay on the outside of the mask. Mm-hmm. So DWR, durable water repellency, is a word that's very common in our industry. So any fabric that may have DWR on it is very, very important because it moves that moisture to the outside of the mask. Again, the inside of the mask is really made to move moisture. It's wicking. Think about T-shirts and moisture wicking material moves it towards the inner part to the outer part of the mask away from the wearer's face. So this, again, it's comfortable, but also if they come in contact with anything, it's not against their face. It's moving it away.
And it looks like it's a kind of, you're making like a fabric tie. It looks like a fabric tie, but it's like a modified medical mask because it's got kind of it's gathered. Oh no, I guess it has pleats. Does it have pleats on each side? It has pleats on each side.
It does. It has three pleats on each side and an elastic. And again, so there were kind of two different ones. One was flat and kind of based on the size of your face. It didn't provide good coverage. So this one with the pleats provided much better coverage.
So you don't know. So we've all been experimenting with these, right? So we've all got that kind of. We have I talk about my husband's got a bigger head, and my child who's smaller head is like which size is going to work. And did you do different sizing on? Do you have one size fits all, or did you? We did one. So this you want to see our homemade mask? So this is our one of ours.
Oh, yeah.
So this is our one of ours. So please.
Oh yeah.
Right?
So see the pleat. Oh, absolutely. See
child size. So
yes,
right.
yes.
Yeah. So, so tell me, like, sizes, right? So we can't get the fabric you're making. So I'm wondering what you're thinking about the homemade mask movement, and where do we fit within? We do not like making masks. I just want to say that. I want to speak for all of us. It is not fun, but
Right.
we feel the call to duty to make masks because people keep asking for it. So do you have any advice or thoughts about sort of what we're doing? Because we're using cotton or batik, or we just don't, we're using whatever we can, but maybe you can help us understand what we're doing compared to what you're doing.
Yeah, I think just thinking ahead, again, my own opinion, I think some of the, if you kind of put it into context, there'll be a lot of professionals making the N95.
Right.
There'll be a lot of us that have the opportunity to make the disposable type mask.
Yeah.
I think the ones that all of the heroes are making right now, like the fabric face mask, have got to fit. And when I think about pleats, and pleats are darts, and the terminology, but that's made to help people. We think about it in our clothes, pleats on the back to make people move. Okay, to be comfortable. So I think you got to think if you can't get DWR fabric and that type of thing, you want to get something that that will move with the face and adjust to the face and be comfortable and not be like a flap.
Right. So the pleats help that because it really does allow it to. That's what we found too, because some of them are flat more or they're rounded so they fit the face, but we found the pleats just fit more people when we did the pleated masks, and they were more versatile. And since we've been doing them for immigrant families and the homeless and friends and family, and now an autism group. So,
Sure.
We're feeling like our goal with our masks right now, we've kind of shifted, keep shifting, is people that may not want to wear a mask, like an autistic kid. So we're making them really fun, and we're trying to make fabrics they'll want to wear them, and they'll see them as like a superhero thing as opposed to something medical. So that's kind of our pivot is that.
That is awesome. And the one thing what I wanted to tell you was that to me, and that this really what you just said about making something that someone wants to wear because they obviously they need to wear.
Yeah.
So number one, it would accomplish that. Number two, here's another thing to keep in mind that we stumbled upon. What's the front and back of the mask?
Right.
What's the inside or the outside?
Right.
Okay. If the material's the same on the what I call the face side and the back side, so we need to make it where it's distinguishable. Right. What's the front and the back?
Right. Yes. So I think what we're trying to do there is do a solid on one side and a pattern fabric on the other side. We also have heard, and we've ordered a bunch of batik fabric because we heard the batiks for the sewing community is a better fabric than just the basic cotton. But we had heard Haley had done research on that, so we've got 40 bolts or so.
Cotton is very absorbent. Think about cotton; it's very, very absorbent. It's one thing. Polyester, not so much.
Yeah.
Or any other fabric. So that's you're exactly right. Your thinking is correct.
Okay. So I know exactly what my quilters are going to ask, which is now they want the DWR fabric. And how are they going to find that? Is that out in the world? Or if they want to do, and what's your strategy on like the homemade mask people want to help? And we're very nervous about being a problem. So help us be better in terms of what we should be looking for in our local shops.
I think so the CDC gave us recommendations that said you should wear a mask, essentially. Okay.
Right.
So what should we do? We all should wear a mask. Okay. And I'm not trying to be elementary, but that's the truth. So what would encourage someone to wear a mask? Well, if it fit correctly, if they knew it worked, and if they didn't mind wearing it out. So, different strokes for different folks, obviously, but I think you're spot on with your idea about the soup. So who's not going to want to wear a mask? Maybe, I don't know, a teenager, a young kid or something.
We got zombie fabric that's really gory for my teenager, so the teenagers can wear really creepy masks. And we think that would be good.
And my 92-year-old father doesn't want to wear a zombie one.
Right, no, it does not.
No,
exactly. Now it's become like
two ends of the spectrum here.
Right. Exactly.
You probably prefer something a little plainer.
Yeah. We made, this is all very silly. We made one who, a person that we were asked for that was very conservative. So we made one that looks kind of like a suit. It's like a suit mask. It's got a kind of, Mr. Professional look. But in terms of what the DWR fabric, do we see water repellent fabric out in the general public? And what would that be exactly? Like, what would we be looking for?
So it would be what I call man-made fabrics,
like
opposed to cotton. You got it.
Polyester.
You got it.
And that's okay. It's breathable if you have polyester fabric of some kind.
Yes.
So would you do like a poly on one side and a cotton on the other? Would you do like by the face? Is that kind of the idea, or?
Yes, and I think that would be a really good idea because again, you want to make sure that it can move moisture, but it has to be. I see folks, and there was a commercial. I forget. Well, I think it's Dove commercial right now that I saw this morning for the first time. That the people are taking off the mask and their skin has the marks on it and where they've had it on for so long. So, comfort, it's got to be, because what could be the worst thing for people to take it off and not wear it? What would be the reasons why you wouldn't wear it?
Because it's not comfortable. Right. The other question I know people, we're such a specific group. We're like so excited you're here. You're like you are a rock star in our world. It's so exciting. Ties versus around the ears. The ones you showed, since we're a podcast, was around the ears. But our worry is always that it's not going to fit, like that it's going to either be too small or too big. So what are your thoughts about sizing in terms of loopy things?
Well, again, I think about sizing and think about the elastic. It needs to have a width that would fit over the ears good, if you think about that. So, smaller strings may be easier to tie, but and tie tighter, but a little bit wider of elastic would hook around the wearer's ear. I think elastic would be best. Again, I go back to my standby statement of what would make me want to wear it, and can I tie it myself? If I'm a child or something, it's harder. I can tell you, this is related. Our gowns that we are making. We made the 50,000. We're in the process of finishing those up for the company that we're helping. We've designed our own gown as well. And in that gown, we worked with Henry Ford Hospital Systems out of Michigan on that. They inspired us to create our own gown. And one of the things that we came up with, instead of the strings that you see, is Velcro on the back, and Velcro across the back that more people can wear. Yeah. Because it can size it. And then when you do get it on, it fits instead of tied real tight or tied real loose, and I can put it on myself without help.
That's really, really smart. And it's also adaptive, because there may be some people who just generally struggle with the ties for whatever reason. And that's
right. Really cool. I have one right here. I'll show you.
Cool.
Oh my gosh, this is so fun.
All right, you're showing us a gown, and the gown is it's cool. Let's see. Awesome. And you can see it's got Velcro on the back, right? Is it on the back? Very cool. And as you can see
where we placed it, that can, be as wide or as narrow as it needs to be with where we placed our Velcro.
Yeah.
Rather than opposed to a string. And when we also did that, one of the other key design points was we really worked on our neck opening, because it could be real wide and real tight, or if it was too big for you, it's draping off your neck and it's not protective. So we actually put Velcro up on the neck as well.
Wow, that's very cool.
Instead of the string.
Very interesting. Well, we are very happy that you're making as many as you're making, because it took me, I made, I think, 100 of them over 2 days, and it took a very long time, and the whole family was involved, and we were very tired at the end. So the idea that you can make 93 a minute makes me very, very happy, because we do not want to be continuing to make these masks. But on that note, what role do you think for us out there, what role does the average person, the average sewist quilter, what role do we play in this ecosystem, and how are we to understand what we're doing every day? Because we are working really hard to make these masks, and sometimes we feel silly about it, that we don't know where we fit in this ecosystem.
I think it's customization and personalization. I think that is, when you think about us, we're going to make this green gown or these white masks over and over, and everybody's going to look the same. And again, what do we want people to do? We want them to wear them. So you provide the opportunity for customization and personalization. Imagine, so many great people do work with embroidery.
Yeah.
Think about just their initials or something. If right. This, you got to think ahead and say, what would make mine special? Yeah. Unfortunately, I can tell you there is some bad news in all this, and we've battled it this week. There are some folks out there with counterfeit masks or photoshopping something, selling online for $50 to $75, and it's despicable, really.
Yeah, and, we've seen that too. That's new.
But
that's just
looking at their design, they're like, okay, screen printing and all that. Hey, this is not like a fashion shirt or whatever. Yeah. This is something we need to get to people now.
Yeah.
But I think thinking ahead, like you're doing, let's make especially young folks.
Yeah.
Let's make them want to wear them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Now, my other question to you is, how long do you think you're going to have to be in the mask making business?
Great question. We don't know, but we know this: as long as there's a need, we're here to help. And as long as we can keep securing raw materials, to do it, we're going to stay in the business. And just the response we've got, ladies, is just. It's really sad. They're pleas of desperation.
Yeah, I know.
And normally there may be like different hospital systems and medical groups that are part of a buying group, or one person buys for them. Yeah. And it seems like a lot of that has, and I don't mean this to be critical, but has broken down. It's like people are just buying and calling anyone that they can to get help because they need help.
Yep. And on our side of it, like, because we run 1 million masks a day, so we have everybody posting like what's happening, so we can get a kind of a temperature of what's happening. And me personally, people just are desperate for masks. I mean, and how could you not give them to them? How could you not, someone would be like, I hate to ask you, but could you make, 10 for this group, right? And it's like, or 30 or 50 or 100. We made 150 for the local reporters and photographers. They didn't have any productive gear as they're out on these stories. And like, how could you not? I mean, it's your whole thing going back to World War I and World War II. This is our moment of like humanity, right? It's a basic human, and they're so appreciative of, and our masks aren't as good as your masks. They couldn't be, right? Because we're just using how could they be? And yet even that is appreciated. So it's just this very strange moment we're in.
Well, they're equally important, I think. And I think about, as you mentioned, it's kind of our time. We serve and protect hardworking people. So hardworking people right now today, they're the same. Whatever the occupation today, the most important are all those frontline folks in the medical, the grocery store workers, the reporters, the truck drivers, everybody. Those are and we've got to serve and protect them right now. And so this is normally not, what we do. We specialize in something else, but boy, the need is great.
Well, you're amazing. Haley may have already told you, I'm a law professor and a cultural historian. So we're kind of, and I quilt. So I do a podcast called JustWannaQuilt. So it's just weird. I'm a weird person, but we're also starting to pivot to think about sort of how to preserve this historically. So I appreciate this conversation, and I would love to chat with you more, and we're hopefully going to do a book or an exhibit or other things that preserve this, and I would love for you to be part of that, because your story is so amazing and really does give us the breadth of sort of, how this connects to history.
Well, we're honored to be on here, and I have to tell you a little bit about the history, because one of the things that I was asked on the CBS Sunday Morning piece was, about, did we know people that that were involved in the front line, and do you think we knew people back in World War II? And I said, I can confirm that, as my grandparents, who worked for the company, tomorrow, April 18th of 1945, so 75 years ago tomorrow, my uncle, my father's oldest brother, was killed in Leipzig, Germany, in World War II. So towards, as you know, the very end of the war.
Right.
So he was with the 271st Regiment. He was killed. And tomorrow is the 75th anniversary of the uncle that I never got to meet. And so when we think about, do we know folks, did folks know people they were trying to serve back in World War II? Absolutely they did, because my grandparents were working for the brand when,
really cool.
when my grandfather's brother, my great uncle, worked for Carhartt, went away to World War II, came back and worked for Carhartt, and then my uncle went away and didn't make it back. So back then they knew people on the front lines, and I know today we know people on the front lines. Yeah. So it's an honor really to help.
Well, you've been with us for a full hour, and I just appreciate the time. And Haley, thank you so much for setting this up.
Of course.
This is just really important moment, and we really thank you for stepping in and doing this. We all want you to be making bazillion masks and get us out of the mask making business. Seriously,
we'll do our best. How about that?
Yes, thank you so much.
And one day I want to come tour your place, because it sounds
always
amazing.
Welcome. Always welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, where are your main corporate headquarters? I know you said you had factories in Tennessee and Kentucky.
In Dearborn, Michigan. We have in Dearborn, and then also we have our supply chain headquarters are in Irvine, Kentucky, here in my town, and then we have facilities throughout Kentucky. Our 3 manufacturing facilities, and 1 in Tennessee, and then our main North American distribution center is in Kentucky as well. So there's over about 5,600 strong associates of Carhartt.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your time. I know it's valuable, and we will send you a link to this. You're cool with us posting this online?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Again, thank you for what you're doing as well. You're heroes as well.
Well, we really appreciate it. I know my quilters are going to be super psyched to understand the industrial side of it, and you're awesome. So thank you again. Haley, hold on.
Thank you.
And thank you again for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my honor.
Thank
you,
Haley.
Haley.
Day and weekend.
Thank you, Dr. Card.
Bye, yeah.
Bye-bye.
So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend Gard. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.